All right, welcome back. So, today was our first day of actual having kids in the building for class. For those of you that were here today, I want to thank you again. For those of you that were not here today, again, this video is for you. So you can kind of see and, excuse me, we can discuss some of the same topics, go through some of the same questions that we had in class earlier today. We are working on the French and Indian War. So today we're just going to look at the causes. Tomorrow we're going to look at the effects. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump in. I need to. Oh, whoops. All right, let me move my face. It's like always my problem. My face is in the wrong way. All right, so what is the French and Indian War? So the French and Indian War, if I were just to ask you, who do you think the French and Indian War was between, you would probably say the French and the Indians. That makes sense. That makes sense. I get why you would think that. I thought that when I was in middle school and high school when I'd hear about the French and Indian War, but that is not the case. So when you hear of the French and Indian War, I want you to think of the French and the Indians, the French and the natives against the British. Now, that is not to say that the British also did not have native allies, because they did. They had native allies, but the French had a substantial amount more. This is also referred to the 7 Years' War. It's referred to as the 7 Years' War, not because of the length of the war in America, because this takes 9 years, but because of the fact that these two countries are fighting they're fighting they're fighting a war at the same time on a different continent. And we'll talk about that here in just a few slides. Just for clarity's sake, this flag is the British flag. This flag is the French. Also, I just want to remind you that I am going to use British, English. I'm going to use those interchangeably. So know that I'm talking about the same place. All right, let's go to our next slide. So cause number one. When we look at this first cause, we see that France and England are bitter enemies. Now, when we look at this map, the United Kingdom, this right here is England, is Britain. Wales is included in that. And then right here is Northern Ireland. This is what makes up the United Kingdom. Now, you can see that the space between the United Kingdom, England, is very small with France, the boundary there. There's water, which is called the English Channel, that separates Britain and France. These two countries have also been around for a long time. They have been fighting for years upon years upon years upon years. And they, at this time, during the French and Indian War, they're also fighting in Europe, which is where we get the term the 7 Years' War from. It does not come from the French and Indian War. Essentially, it is just an extension of the 7 Years' War, which is why it is also the French and Indian War is referred to as the 7 Years' War, even though it takes more than 7 years. Make sure that you are familiar. No, I wouldn't say familiar, but just that you understand the geography of Europe a little bit. The countries that I really need you to know, just for our sake in American history, I need you to have an idea where England is, United Kingdom. I need you to have an idea where France is, where Spain is. If you know where Spain is, you know where Portugal is, and then Italy. I would say those are the countries that you need to focus on, just kind of knowing where they are. Germany, to a lesser extent, but if you know where those countries, like generally where they are in Europe, you're gonna be just fine. I mean, essentially, in American history too, those are the countries that you're going to be talking about. You'll talk about you'll talk about Poland in American history too a little bit. You may talk about Norway, Sweden, Finland just a little bit, but for the most part, you're talking about these countries that we already listed off. Maybe Greece. All right, cause number two. There we go. All right, so France and Britain were both imperialistic. So imperialism is the policy of extending a country's power and influence through diplomacy or military force. Military force, that is military force. You know what that is. Diplomacy, when we talk about diplomacy, we're talking about negotiation. So this is essentially like, okay, how can my country help your country, and how can your country help my country? If it's a smaller country that does not have a large economy, that does not have a large military, then becoming part of the English or becoming part of the French could offer some definite benefits. So this is kind of how imperialism was used pre-World War I, World War II. Okay. So let's go ahead. And the fact that both of these countries are like this is the reason why they both own land in North America and why they want to continue to expand that land. This takes us to our next one. France and England both have land in America. Now, we know of the 13 colonies. The 13 English colonies are on the coast right here. Now, North Carolina is right in this area right here. It is not, excuse me, not Dion. North Carolina, you know the shape of North Carolina. This is not reflecting the shape of North Carolina. There is something in the way. There is something blocking this land of the English from the French. Hint. They're large. Give up? The Appalachian Mountains. The Appalachian Mountains are what essentially breaks these two parts in half. Because again, you didn't want to go through the Appalachian Mountains, especially with it's easy to do so today, but on foot with a bunch of people, with horses, livestock, no, it's not easy. The French, they settle in this portion of Middle America because of the Mississippi River. So as you can see, New Orleans is actually right down here. Louisiana, what they would do is they controlled this river, and those rivers spawn in many directions. Like what France has is very valuable territory because the way the rivers run. The Mississippi from north to south, the Missouri that cuts across the west, the Ohio which cuts east, and I don't know what. I think this is the Allegheny River. I'm not quite sure what this one is. Rivers are important. Rivers are important. Oh, man, that's pretty cool. Yeah, okay. We'll just roll with this then. I ain't worried about it. So, New Canada and Louisiana, as you can see, there are parts of Canada that are both controlled by the English and the French. Okay. France has actually been here a little bit longer. All right, anyways, let's go to cause number 4. So France and England both wanted to control the Ohio Valley Territory. Now, why do they want to do this? Well, if they control that territory, it means they control the trade. Why? How do they control the trade by controlling that territory? Is exactly what we were just talking about. How we have the rivers that cut across the United States, or what will become the United States. So again, the Mississippi from north to south, the Missouri, which then turns, I don't know, I think, Missouri comes all the way out here. The Ohio, and then I was wrong. This little one right here is the Cumberland. I forgot about that one. The Arkansas River, the Red River, all that spawns from the Mississippi. If you want to know why the Mississippi River is always like a big deal, that's why it's a big deal, because it splits in so many different directions. And what was the source of mass transportation before trains and planes? You have boats through water. All right. Cause number 5. Lastly, the French and English both wanted to control the fur trade with the natives. So fur trade equals money. Money equals power. I drew this up for our class today. This actually, we can expand this a little bit more. Like, why do people want land? Or why do countries want land? That's the better question. Why do countries want land? They want land because land equals resources. The more land you have, the more resources you could potentially have. Okay, why do people want resources? Because the more resources you have, the more money you can earn from those resources. Okay, well, why do people want money? Well, money equals power, because money, again, can buy powerful equipment. It can buy powerful things, powerful weaponry. It can pay people to create something powerful like a military. But why do you want power? Why do you want power? You want power for influence. Influence is the greatest thing a country can. That is essentially what all countries want: influence, to where they don't even have to strike. All they have to do is say that they don't want this happening, or they don't want to do this, or they do want to do this, and they want you to do the same, or don't want you to do that. That is influence. And if other countries will adhere to the wishes of the countries with influence, I mean, that's what you want. That's what you want. That's how you essentially you have control of, partly you control parts of the world, not just your own country, but not just your own hemisphere, but parts of the entire world. All right. So that's where we'll leave it today. Tomorrow we'll look at the effects of the French and Indian War, because essentially that's what we're most focused on, is the effects. This is, for all intents and purposes, a French war and a British war, but not an American war. But it's going to lead to the American Revolution. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow.